Next question is from Laura, who
Hey,
says,
Laura.
she says, someone I love very much is struggling greatly with same-sex attraction. He's a born-again Christian. He believes that perhaps to starve the temptations may be the only way to go.
Hmm.
I want to bring some very basic TOB concepts to him about opening the yearning instead of starving the desires.
Yes.
Could you help me find the words that may help him reflect and remain hopeful?
Bless you, Laura. I can feel in your question your deep love for this person. It's evident. And I love also she's exhibiting a really good understanding of basic concepts that we talk about quite often,
Yeah.
and that I learned fundamentally from John Paul II, that we are called not to repress our sexual desires, but we're called to experience their redemption. And I don't want to read too much into the idea of starving that temptation. You don't want to feed the temptation. So does that mean you want to starve the temptation? I would have to sit down with him to understand what he really means by it. But I think Laura is probably correct to have a little warning sign here that that is not the end goal. The end goal is not just to starve our disordered desires. The end goal is to feed rightly the desire in us that has been disordered. Father Jacques Philippe says it so well. He says, the only way to heal a bad appetite is with a good appetite. And that means, what is a bad appetite? A bad appetite is a good appetite that's gotten twisted up. So what is needed is the redirection of the appetite towards what we really desire. Now, this takes initially steps of faith, because your body might be screaming, here's what I want, but you know objectively what your body is screaming for is objectively disordered. So we have to plant our flag of faith in the beginning of saying, Lord, I believe you want to satisfy the deepest desire of my heart. And I plant my flag. I make an act of faith that you did not create me to frustrate me, that whatever I'm experiencing in me that is disordered, I surrender to you, and I invite you into that disorder to redirect the desire towards what I really desire. I once heard it said this way, and it just resonates so deeply with my heart. No one is so free as the person who desires what he really desires, which is a recognition that there are fundamental desires in us that get twisted up. And to be liberated means to desire what you really desire. You know, our culture talks a big line about sexual liberation. But by that, they mean just following your disordered desires wherever they take you. Right? Indulging your disordered desires. But true sexual liberation is not the liberty to indulge your compulsions. It's liberation from the compulsion to indulge. That's a radical difference. And I think this is where Laura wants to help lead her friend. Laura, I would encourage you to invite your friend to this act of faith. There's a psalm that I pray whenever I'm feeling my disordered desires tugging at me. And it goes like this. I treasure your promises in my heart, O Lord, lest I sin against you. I treasure your promises in my heart, O Lord, lest I sin against you. What is the promise? The promise is the fulfillment of all desire. When we treasure that in our hearts, it saves us from sin. Because what is sin? It's misdirected desire. Sin is a lack of faith. And what is faith? Faith is John Paul II says, faith is the openness of the human heart to God's gift. What is God's gift? God's gift is the fulfillment of my deepest yearning. God's gift in my hunger for infinite joy. God's gift is the bread come down from heaven, the bread that gives the infinite joy. We've said in previous podcasts, in fact, I think it was just last week, in our podcast that we were talking about the relationship between the Eucharist and human sexuality, the marriage bed. And we could put it this way, and I think this is particularly important for those struggling with same-sex desires. Untwist any sexual distortion, and you're going to end up at the Eucharist. What do I mean? I often tell the story of a person I know who has same-sex attraction, who had this experience of desperately wanting to drink the blood of this other man.
Wow.
What's going on there? He wants to what's in the blood. What's in the blood is the life of that person. And that man wants to drink in that blood because he believes that the manhood he's seeking is in the blood of this other man. And I know a counselor who once described the homosexual inclination as a cannibal compulsion. Why a cannibal compulsion? Because cannibals want to eat people they admire because they believe they will acquire their traits. That desire to drink that other person's blood is a great example of that cannibal compulsion. I want to take that person's blood into my blood because I believe I will acquire the manhood that I feel that I lack in myself. I know the homosexual inclination is a very complex matter, and I don't want to give the impression that I think I understand it, but I do know that this is a factor involved in it. Untwist that kind of cannibal compulsion, if you will. Untwist that. Where are you? You're at the Eucharist, where we do take in the blood and the body of the ultimate man, and we do acquire his traits. Every sexual perversion, untwisted, will take us to what we're really looking for. It will take us to that freedom of the person who is free because he desires what he really desires. What do we really desire? We really, really desire union with Jesus. It's what we really desire. There's a parallel here with female homosexuality as well. Part of an authentic Christian life is devotion to Mary, our mother. And every woman who untwists what might be if it is a lesbian desire, what is a twisted desire, untwist it, and you will find yourself in right relationship with Mary.
I'm thinking about, as Laura shared, that her dear friend is a born-again Christian. Maybe she means that he's not Catholic, but that he has an alive faith and relationship with the Lord. And thinking about what you were sharing about the Eucharist, I just had a thought of him reading the story of the Last Supper and just placing himself in the place of one of the apostles, being given by the Lord to eat. This is my body. Drink. This is my blood. Just as one example of many, many ways to pray that are fruitful. But because, you were sensing the importance of this connection with the Lord giving us his very self to take in. I think just sharing that as a possible, encouragement to him to recognize how sincerely the Lord loves him. And I think that too is really on Laura's heart, and that deep need to know that he's loved. When we experience something that we don't want to experience, and we can feel a self-hatred, a feeling that God must hate me or reject me, those kinds of things are so painful. And so, what the evil one wants for us, and to place himself frequently in, going to church, going to prayer or Bible study, or places where he can hear the Lord's voice saying to him how much he loves him, just frequently, just connecting again and again, that we need to keep hearing it and keep opening our hearts to know it so that his grace can be flowing.
And he loves you as you are, where you are. There's nothing you need to do to earn that love. But the more that love comes in, the more those desires begin to get set aright. And it doesn't happen overnight. It is a bitter, bitter struggle. It is a taking up of the cross every day. I don't anything I'm saying here to imply at all that I think, oh, just say this prayer, do this little thing, and tomorrow you'll be great. I know from my own inner battles with my own disordered desires, these things do not just go away because we said such and such a prayer, but it is that daily taking up of the cross. It is that daily willingness to invite Christ into the desire as we experience it. We don't need to pretty it up. Say, Lord, come into this desire. Right now, I have this desire. Fill in the blank, whatever it is. What is the real desire you feel in that moment? And here's where I'd say, don't try to rid yourself of the desire. And if that's what he means by starving the desire, then yeah, that would be a problem. But open that desire as you experience it to Christ's indwelling presence. He came and died on a cross and rose from the dead precisely to meet us where we are, to bring us where we're called to be.
Mm-hmm.
All our sufferings, united with his, can and will become our joys and our glories. That's the promise. The invitation is not to starve ourselves. The invitation is to bring our desires into the banquet.
Some of our listeners may not be aware of the Living Waters ministry. I
Yes.
don't know if you want to mention
Yes,
that as well.
absolutely. A dear friend and colleague in ministry, Andrew Comiskey, runs, his ministry is called Desert Stream, and the program he offers for the healing of the sexually broken is called Living Waters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just for those who have same-sex attraction. It's for anyone who experiences any kind of disintegration. And guess what? That's all of us. Mm. It's for everybody. So we'll put a link in the show notes to Living Waters. Mm-hmm. They have programs all around the nation. Hopefully you could find one in your area. And it's an ecumenical program. Andrew spent 30-plus years as a non-Catholic in ministry and then later did become a Catholic, but he's very sensitive to the ecumenical issues, and it would be a great program, Laura, for your friend.
Yeah.